Welcome to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, the show where you get the inside access to the best minds in the game. Each week, Chris has the privilege of chatting with top instructors, legendary players, course architects, and industry insiders. If you're looking to improve your game, gain a new perspective, or just hear some incredible golf stories, you are indeed in the right place.
You see, Chris, let me tell you something, I haven't spoken to a press man in my life that is knowledgeable, seriously, as you are. Never.
You do such a great job. It kind of makes me feel good all of a sudden.
You do so much for the game. You're so kind to all of us that are out there in the game. You know, we need more people like you in the game of golf.
Thank you for pressing play. Now, grab your clubs, step up to the tee, and let's get started. This is Next on the Tee.
Hi, folks, and welcome into this edition of Next on the Tee, where golf legends live and your game gets better. I'm your host, Chris Mascaro, and as always, I appreciate you being here and pressing play on this week's show. I'm so excited to share with you three great guests that I know you're really going to enjoy. And you're going to take a lot away for your appreciation of our game, its history, and your approach to how you play it. Because leading things off is not only a great instructor who has been named one of the top instructors in the state of New York, but also just a wonderful human being, and that is Brian Jacobs. This is the 13th time that I've had the privilege of spending some time with Brian and sharing him with you. He just recently transitioned back from an elite club down in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, back home to Rochester, New York. So Brian's going to share with you why the larger club just wasn't for him. Despite the membership and the benefits from being down there being tremendous for him, it just wasn't a good fit, and he's going to tell you why. He's going to tell you the lessons that he learned and give some advice for the young PGA professionals out there listening for some things to consider when you're out there looking for a job, interviewing for a job, and considering a place to go. He's got some really solid advice for you, so please listen up to what Brian has to say. And it's really stuff that we should all consider in our job hunt. So very important stuff from Brian. We'll also discuss the positive impact that he has had on so many people's lives, players and people outside the game as well, and the upcoming trip that he is putting together for anyone who might be interested out there and going down and playing Bay Hill, you know, Mr. Palmer's wonderful golf club down there in Orlando, Florida. Following Brian making his Next on the Tee debut with me is Connor Lewis, and Connor is absolutely fantastic. He is the founder and CEO of the Society of Golf Historians. He's also started another new company called Antiquity Golf. Be sure to go out and check this place out online, antiquitygolfco.com. Connor tells us all about the great history and people that are involved out there in the Society of Golf Historians. You're going to hear about the items that he's got up for sale at Antiquity Golf, like a Wanamak trophy. Oh, by the way, it's not just something you can look at online. If you want to own an amazing piece of golf history, now you can. As one of the world's foremost authorities on golf history, Connor weighs in on the GOAT conversation, right? The thing that always gets Twitter fired up. We get into the details of the careers of Sam Snead, Ben Hogan, Jack, Tiger, and why Connor would pick Lee Trevino to go one-on-one against anybody ever. Plus the greatness of Bobby Locke. You've heard me talk about that for years with Gary Player. Connor weighs in on the greatness of Locke as well. Then we get into how LIV has changed the game and how the PGA Tour has almost literally copied everything that LIV has done short of the shotgun starts. So, like I say, Connor's fantastic. You're going to love his insights in this conversation. He joins me in segment 2. Then come back and be a part of part 2 when we get our monthly visit from the Confidence Doctor, Dr. Bob Winters. Doc updates us on the tremendous success that his players are out there having in some of the most important tournaments of the year. He lets us know what social loafing means with respect to golf. We also discuss how the PGA talks, quote-unquote, about growing the game, while first reducing the number of tour cards and now talking about reducing the number of overall tournaments, plus relegating others down to the Korn Ferry Tour. And then he gives us a key for those of us who enjoy tournament play. When doubt starts to creep in, believe that you belong out there, and what his DUMB, D-U-M-B acronym stands for, again, with relationship to golf. So, folks, thank you again for pressing play and being a part of this week's show. I can't thank you all enough. Sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for about the next 90 minutes in total, hour for the first segment of the show, and then part two, about another 30 minutes with Doc. All right, but before we continue and get into the rest of the show, I want to start off by giving a shout out to my great friends over at the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. TribLive.com is the leading news website for Western Pennsylvania with news around the clock. Pittsburgh pro sports coverage, a high school sports network, a podcast network, which you can find next on the T on. So go out and bookmark TribLive.com or download the Trib Live app for free and stay up to date with all the news in Western Pennsylvania and this show. I also want to talk about our friends over at the Pittsburgh Brewing Company and Iron City Beer, a brand that I have loved my whole life and started drinking when I was 21 years old, of course. Whether you're a hacker or a scratcher, the secret to a successful day on the links is knowing when it's time to grab an iron, even if that means keeping it in the bag till the 19th hole. If it's been a while since you've reached for Pittsburgh staple beer, it's time to revisit Iron City. Thanks to their incredible new facility in Creighton, the best-tasting Iron City beer ever made is now available at a course near you. Iron City pairs well with any lie and sky and serves as a friendly reminder that there's always next round. And because it's never too early for chocolate, their double chocolate Bach is back for the season, and it's the perfect companion for a cozy winter evening. Check out all of their wonderful beers and their gift shop online by going to pittsburghbrewing.com. And this year, get ready to experience a game like never before at the Keep, the brand new Bill Bergen and Reese Jones co-designed course at Macklemore. Nestled high atop Lookout Mountain, the Keep offers breathtaking vistas that are made even more spectacular as the autumn colors paint the landscape in rich hues of red, orange, and gold. With its challenging layout and awe-inspiring views, every round here is an unforgettable adventure. Whether you're taking on the signature holes or just soaking in the scenery, the Keep is where your best golf meets nature's finest backdrop. So grab your clubs and join us up at Macklemore. The Keep is open and it's waiting for you. Okay, now back in making it a baker's dozen times with me is one of the great instructors and people on the planet for that matter, and that is Brian Jacobs. Let me remind you about Brian's background. He earned his undergraduate and his Master's of Education degrees from State University, New York at Brockport. He became a PGA Assistant Director of Instruction at Ravenwood Golf Club up in Rochester, New York back in 2006, simultaneously becoming a staff instructor for Hank Haney Golf. In 2010, he became the Director of Instruction and a Hank Haney Certified Instructor at Irondequoit Country Club there in Rochester. 2014, he became a lead instructor on the Golf Channel Academy. A year later, in 2015, he started his own golf academy at Ridgemont Country Club. He's been named a top 100 instructor by Golf Range America and one of the top instructors in the state of New York by Golf Digest. He's a two-time recipient of the Western New York PGA Section Teacher of the Year Award, the Player Development Award, the Bill Strasbaugh Award, and the Horton Smith Award. He was recently down at Belle Isle Country Club there in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, but is now back up in Rochester at a new location there, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. And he is also one of the most positive and uplifting people you will ever meet, and I'm excited I get to spend some more time with him this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Brian, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Chris, thank you so much. But that was a great introduction. I got a tear in my eye, but I appreciate our relationship, our friendship, and I'm so happy and honored and humbled to be, with you tonight, and looking forward to laughing and sharing a few stories with you.
All right, Brian, we got to get this out of the way early. Great news for you, awful news for me, but your Bills put a beat down on my Steelers, and like I said earlier today when we were talking, it was the second worst half of football that I have ever seen from any football team, let alone the Steelers. It reminded me of the Browns playoff game that we played back in 2020 when they scored 28 points on us in the first quarter. I think we saw, records aside, that this is just a bad Steelers football team, and the Bills, even without your two starting tackles, you got a really good rushing offense. Josh Allen, obviously a couple of time MVP back there playing well, running well, didn't have to pass the ball that much. Bad windy day in Pittsburgh the other night. But how do you feel about your Bills and what you saw in that game?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. It's our area of the country. We want it so bad here. Like, you guys have some Super Bowl wins. Buffalo they just wear it on their sleeve. I mean, the new stadium's going in, and It just seems like the needle's pointing at, like this win, for the Super Bowl. It's the 60th year of the Bills, 60th year of the Super Bowl, and I mean, it's just crazy, all the 60s that are up here. But yeah, you still have to play football, right? And I think sometimes Josh Allen in particular, when you look at him, everybody in the area, including the media, kind of say like he's got to put the team on his back and go. And as Josh goes, the team goes. But he really is starting to lean on the running game, which is good in the short passing game, which he did early in the year. And they were throttling teams, no problem at all. So they've got a lot of weapons. James Cook out of the backfield, and up here, people think they don't have a great receiving core, but they do. They're all phenomenal. They're all superior athletes. So you just got to get open and get it to them. So it's exciting to watch him play. And I talk one of my friends, we played college football together, and he's a huge Bills fan. And I talk him off the ledge every week. He just can't stay patient. And we played together, but he was an offensive guy, and I played defense and coached also football for about 10 years after I finished college. And, it's a chess match, and you got to figure what works and what doesn't work. And so they've been trying to run these bubble screens to Khalil Shakir, and they're just not good. They're not a very good screen team. And so they're a good run team, two backs, 12 personnel, and just zone protection at first, and let James Cook pick his way. And then once they get to zone, they can start smashing them around man on man after that. So they did a nice job. I mean, they ran like we talked about this morning. They ran the same play about 15 times.
Yeah.
And it was some of it was zone blocking, and James Cook just got a crease. He just found a place to go, and they went, and kind of took TJ Watt out of the game. And when he doesn't get to rush the passer, it's not that he's not good against the run, but he's there, to stop the pass. And so it really was incredible what they did, and hopefully they keep it running. And I'm sorry it was the Steelers. I wish it was the Patriots. But
me too.
Yeah, but you'll take it wherever, and it's great. Long answer, but there's a lot of ups and downs, and I have coached guys over the years, and still do, and it's interesting. If I always say to them, when they come in, they're very upbeat. They have very short memories, which is amazing, especially corners. You have to have short-term memory loss, to play corner, because you're going to get beat eventually with as elite as these guys are. And it's like I say, well, like we throw up a turd at work and nobody knows, and we don't get fired. Nobody boos us. Nobody wants us traded or kicked out of the company, but they throw one up at work, and, they're booed, and the media disparages them, and, fire everybody. And so I try to keep a pretty even keel about it. It's a long season, and you really can't predict. I mean, it's awesome. The NFL, I think the NFL is awesome, minus the Thursday night games. I think everything else is fine.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on Thursday night games?
Yeah, I'd like to see them get rid of that too. I mean, it's a short week. You don't have great time to recover. I can't imagine as a player. You're still beaten up from the week before. You don't have enough time to prepare either for the team. It's just
it's not a good product.
Yeah, I just don't think it's very good.
And there's a lot of injuries, and I have two close friends that were 35 and 20 years as trainers with the Bills, and they said, these guys don't even start feeling good until Wednesday, and so you're asking two humongous human beings to smash into each other like a car crash, and then to recover in 4 days. I could see it maybe after both teams have a bye, and they have 10 days or so to prepare, but I don't know. I think it's a little bit inhumane, but I get why they do it. It's money.
Well, yeah, it's all money, right?
Yeah, but put a college game on that night, or even a high school game. People will watch if it's produced and marketed the right way. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Thursday nights. I wasn't the overseas games either. I'm still not sold on them, but it's going to happen. They're going to grow that league as much as they can and get it in front of as many people as they can. So,
Yep.
so
Yeah,
we
it's
need that
coming.
in golf.
Indeed. So let's talk a little golf.
Sure.
Like I mentioned in your intro, you're back there in Rochester at a new
Yeah.
course, and we'll get into the details about that in a minute. But perhaps for all the young PGA professionals who are listening out there, talk about why it didn't work out when you moved down to Palm Beach Gardens and what you learned
Sure.
from that experience.
Yeah, I was, it really was an interesting process for me. I had pretty much given up on having the dream job. I was very happy and somewhat content. And I think, and I don't want this to sound conceited, but when you become relevant in the world of golf, there's only a few of us that are that way. And so you get a lot of feelers, right? You get a lot of people calling and, hey, would you do this? So career consultants will call you from other areas of the country and say, like, you need to apply for this job. And I had just come out of a long interviewing process with the PGA of America, and it was great. I loved every minute of interviewing, and they picked someone else, which is perfectly fine, but I did make it to a finalist. And so I felt like I was close. And then I applied at Balliniles and I didn't hear anything, for quite a while. And Balliniles is a 3,000 member club. It's a Troon property in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. It's got I mean, 3 golf courses, 250 events. They had just done a $1.4 million learning center and renovated their ranges. And so they had 65 spots on 2 ranges and a wedge range, and then also 25,000 square foot putting green and bunkered areas and any kind of lie that you'd want to greens. And so to me, when I interviewed, when they did call me, they said, you're one of our finalists. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. I saw the director of golf and the head pro at the PGA show, and they interviewed me the next day. And, it was great. I had a great interview. I thought it was awesome. I called my wife and I said, I think I'm probably going to get it. I just had a feeling. I've connected really well with the guys. And so then I started calling other people in the area, like, hey, tell me about this and tell me about that. And everything checked out, all the boxes checked. And so they brought me in for on property and did that. And some of the guys that were there ahead of me, they only spent maybe 45 minutes or an hour. I was there 9 hours
Wow.
talking to the members. I did an impromptu lesson, talking with the staff. I talked to senior leadership, because I really wanted to know, like, if they were happy, and where they were from. Did they transplant or were they from Florida? And it was a mix. There was people from the Northeast, and there was a guy there that was there 42 years. And I said, 42 years? I go, why are you here still? He goes, well, I like it. He goes, I love my job and I just don't see myself never not doing it. And so just kind of the combination of everything. I told him if, it all lines up and you make an offer, I said, we'll probably accept. And so it was really fast. I was on property early February. I was there late February. In March, I started March 3rd. And it was great. I loved the members. But sometimes when you're in those positions, um, the dynamics of the staff and how they run the operation, is a little murky because there's a lot of places that have, what I call crossover staff, which is basically their operations, and then they might teach a little bit. And so we had a fully dedicated learning center. And my understanding was, that when I came in, I was going to run the learning center, and so I would do scheduling, budgeting, everything. And it wasn't that way. And so even as you looked contractually, I didn't really have a leg to stand on, to go and say, like, hey, my contract says this. And so some of the stuff I wasn't, they were really good about. And other things they were like, well, we kind of do it this way, and that's just kind of how it is, and we're just going to keep going that way. And that's fine. I respect it. I mean, what could I do? Right. So I said, well, my wife didn't really like the area, and I was, 80/20 on the job. I liked it, but I didn't love it like I did running my own brand. And so I made a decision, to come back to New York, and people thought I was crazy. The inside people of the golf business thought I was crazy. The members loved it. They said, you love your wife, you're going back. And I said, yeah. I said, and I'll run my own business, and I'll come back, and it'll be life is wonderful, and it's been great. I wound up at a golf club here in the area, smaller daily fees, so there's no members. They do 35,000 rounds a year, and they've got a awesome practice facility, and we're going to do some upgrades on that. And then they were kind enough to let me work as an independent, so I didn't ask to be an employee. So they're allowing me to run my brand there, and it's just been great. They're very, very nice people, and the owner, this will be his 4th year with the club, and he owned 4 businesses. He sold one, and now he's more dedicated financially to upgrading and putting his mark on the facility, and which is great. We had a meeting the other day, and he's very excited about 2026. They were profitable in 2025, and they crank, and I would call it a factory. They just move people, and they're very, very good at it. They're good at service, and they're just super nice people. And the people at Ballonels were nice too. That wasn't like they were mean or rude or anything else. You could tell it just wasn't for me. It wasn't my dream, of what I came in and anticipated that it was going to be. And so sometimes things, when you're a young person, you'll look at the flash and you'll take the money and everything else, and then your job stinks. You're not really contributing, and I want to be, a contributor. I write every day to like live a life of service and significance, not relevance. It doesn't matter to be relevant. What matters is if you're significant and you're making an impact on people's lives. And so I didn't really have the opportunity to do that other than the students. And I had young guys that worked there too. And so we had 4 people in the PGA program, level 1, and I got 3 of them through to membership. So I was very proud about that. I used to have them over for dinner, and kind of did it the way I would do it, like just coaching a team. And the people that were there for a long time were not open to being coached. They didn't want to change. They didn't want to do anything. And the people that were leaning in were doing everything I asked, and just said, if you can do this, this is what'll happen. And for those that don't, this is what'll happen. And so kind of when you have that dynamic, and you've probably been at companies before like that, where you come in and you're like, I'm going to change the world.
Yeah.
And if you can just change a little bit of it, it was great. And so even the students that I had there, I probably had 30 students. They text me all the time, like, how are you? How are you doing? We miss you. So I'm going to go down to Port St. Lucie. I just worked it out this afternoon when I got home from Columbus. I'll be down there the 16th and 17th at PGA Golf Club in Village, in Port St. Lucie, and I just sent out a feeler, and I think I got 10 responses already that they're going to come over and they want to, take coaching again, and can you come back every month? And so it's you develop those relationships, and which is, I think, one of my strengths, honestly. And to me, it was more about having relationships with the staff, everybody, buying in, and when they can't. When you have that type of culture that pushes and pulls against each other, it's not healthy. And I could see the light that it wasn't going to change. And so it was great to come back to New York, even though we got a snowstorm today. It's been awesome.
So let's take that a step further, Brian.
Sure.
Kind of getting back to your peers that might be a little bit younger in the learning process. Are there questions that you look back and say, I probably should have asked this. I probably should have asked that.
Yeah.
There's some things that you would want somebody that you are mentoring to be sure to ask.
Yeah,
They faced
definitely.
it?
No, I learned a lot. I think as a director, you should be in directors' meetings. You should be part of the culture that shapes the future. And also, do I have an office? Will I get a computer? Those were the questions I never asked. And so I didn't have one. I was put in a team room with other teammates, guys that were on the staff, and like, they don't need me sitting in there. They needed to be able to talk about everybody, like at the water cooler without me sitting there. That would be one of the big changes that I would make. ask those questions like, well, where's my space? Where do I go? Where do I park? It's really funny that I parked for a couple weeks up by the clubhouse. I didn't know where to park. And so then I got asked to slide down into the back parking lot. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I watched 3 or 4 managers park up there. And then I said, huh, how come they get to park here and I don't get to park here? And so I started learning my place pretty quick, just from simple things like that. And they're like, and I go, but you park there, that director parks there, that director parks there. Why don't I get to park here? I'm a director. And then I was like, oh, I'm not really a director. I'm a teacher. It's a title. It basically wound up being just kind of a titled position. And so sometimes younger people will go for the title, like, oh, I want to be a director of operation or a director of this. And I mean, I've been in interviews since then, and I go, I don't care what the title is. You can put me down as a chief fun officer, right? CFO. Um, I don't really
Yeah.
need a title. Don't have to have it. And you start to look, even I was looking, like I've been on a lot of lists over the years and I wasn't on any list this year. And someone called me and said, you're not on any list. Like, what's going, like, are you mad? I go, no. I go, it matters, but it doesn't matter. Because you know you and you know how you work and you know what you're doing in people's lives. So at the end of the day, it's if XYZ magazine doesn't value me, that's fine. But if my students don't value me, it's a little different story. So there's constant movement, right? And what we do. And so younger people, they don't know the questions to ask. Like I'm mentoring a young guy right now that this place just hired, Eagle Val, where I'm at, and he's asking a lot of questions now. And I said, oh, that was a question you should have asked in your interview. And so let's go back. I go, do you have a contract? And he said, yeah. I go, let's go look at your contract and then let's see if we can sit down with the owner and get some revisions so there's more clarity for you. I said, and I go, he's new at this. I said, he's owned different like machine shops and different businesses. And so their contracts look a lot different. So let's get things in writing and let's redo your contract. So I'm going to meet with them tomorrow. And because you can't have generalities in there. Things need to be specific. Like there needs to be closure clauses and succession plans if you're not going to stay, and how much time you give and how much time they need to give you and your benefits and your vacation and all these other things, along with the standard, that you need to meet. And so this was his contract was super basic. You're going to work 40 hours and you're going to get X number of dollars was basically it. And I said, well, but they're asking you to do a lot of tasks, for the food and beverage area and for, the weddings. And I said, I don't know if that would be in your job description. So let's do a job description. I go, I have one already. And I said, I have a templated contract for a golf professional that we can propose or put to them and they'll sign it. They just don't know, they don't know how to do these things. And so you can't plead ignorance anymore. You have to be very, very sharp when you go out there. And so, but there were questions I should have asked, when I look back but it was great. I enjoyed it. The people were fantastic. The members were absolutely unbelievable. And the staff too, super, super nice people. I can see why they're super successful there.
Brian, you mentioned a phrase, people's lives, a moment ago. And like I mentioned in your intro, you're one of the great people on the planet. I think
Thank you.
You're more positive and upbeat, and you have that kind of aura about you. I know you work on a lot of golf swings. You've done tens of thousands of lessons and spent, many more hours doing that. But what I get a sense of from the times that we have spent together, and again, this is the 13th time I've had the privilege of having you on the show. I would say about you that as much as you want to help somebody break 100, break 90, break 80, whatever milestone they're after and play their best golf, you also want to be a positive impact on people's lives.
Absolutely.
Talk about your being able to do that.
Yeah, I think that, that's number one for me is being transformational and not transactional. And we hear it a lot, in our business, like people are very transactional. They think about the money, they talk about the money. And yeah, money is important, but it's not my number one thing that drives me. I was talking with my dad, he's 90 the other day, and he was saying, like, he goes, I think your standards are just too high. And I go, they're not too high, Dad. I said, there are the exact standards that you set for us as kids, and so my responsibility, especially when I teach juniors, because they don't get a lot of parenting, a lot of them, they're parented by the TV or by their phone. And we have to teach them how to open the door for girls. You hold the door for people when they're walking in. If you see a piece of trash on the ground, you pick it up. Those little lessons go a long ways in life. And then also, you always have a choice on whether you're negative or positive. When you hit a poor shot, you have a choice. You don't have to respond with negativity or anger, or you could respond in a creative way and say, wow, I get a chance to be creative. I get a chance to curve the ball. And that's what always kind of made me go. I like challenges. I like to compete. I like to move the ball around. And so you're going to hit some bad shots. And like, how do you recover? How do you kind of like Dr. Rob Bell's book? I don't know if you've ever read it. It's called Puke and Rally, right? You barf on your shoes and then somehow you figure out how to, get through your round and make it a positive experience to learn. And so we get a lot with students, which is something I really enjoyed at my last position. Was there were older people taking up the game, and it was like little kids with adult brains, right? They sat at a desk their whole life making millions of dollars, and then they think they're gonna um, overachieve in golf or achieve in golf just like they did in business. And I try to explain to them, it's not like business. It's not like watching the market move. I said, your market is going to be your greens in regulation and your misses and fairways and your putts and everything else. Yes, there are some analytics to it, but the market's not emotional. It's just paper and it moves, right? Little lines move. I said, and for you, we have to get you're a human being. And so you're playing a really hard game. It's not like walking into your office and making $1 million by the time you get to the 12th floor because your computer's already on working for you. It's different. You got to put more work in, and you have to do it the right way too, just like you did in your company to build it. Like when you started out in this, you made a lot of mistakes, I'm sure. And you're like, oh man, I should have done that different. Well, now you know. So
Right.
you don't make many mistakes. And it took years, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. And I try to explain to them, and they're like, well, I don't have 10 years. I go, well, how old are you? 60. Well, you're going to hopefully live past 70. I go, your dad's a member here and he's 90, so. But I think the funniest story though, when I was there, I had one of my first days there, I got a call from the shop and said, hey, Mr. Smith's son is going to come in for a lesson. I put him in for, 2:00. And I'm thinking like, oh, he's going to be like 14, 15, like I wonder if he'll be 6 or 7, 59. I was like, wait a minute. Oh yeah, your dad's like 100. I got to get my brain, to move. And these people are amazing. Human beings are absolutely incredible. Like we did speed classes with 60-year-olds that got, and an 81-year-old that got 11 miles per hour of club head speed in our speed class.
Wow.
And so I kept telling them, like, don't stop moving. Like, you've got to keep moving. Go to the gym that we have here. Play golf. Keep walking. Keep moving. That's the most important thing that you're doing. And none of us are going to play on tour, but we want to be the best that we can be. And so what you're doing by getting coaching, and I call it coaching because I take them out on the course. We weren't supposed to fraternize with the members, but I used to go to dinner with the members all the time off property. I would say, oh, I just might happen to be at XYZ restaurant, and they would just show up, right? So that wasn't really fraternizing. They said, can we sit here? Yeah, sure. And there'd be a ton of them, right? And you would talk, and if the GM ever came in or the head pro or whatever, like, why were you out to dinner with them? I go, I was out alone. They sat down with me,
Yeah.
They're like, you can't do that. And I go, well, you talk to the members. I'm sure, like, why are we doing this? They're people. We
Right.
can, I'm different, and I'm not like, it's not a transaction to me. It's not like, how many people can I teach in 10 hours? I'm like, if I only teach one person or two people in 8 hours and I gave it everything I had, I'm happy. And
Yeah.
it's the money takes care of itself. And it's those relationships, that you're really looking for, and that we all crave and we all need. And so I've always been keyed in on that. And that's why everything I do is based on long term, because you can't develop a relationship in 10 minutes. You got to put the work in, and like I texted a bunch of students today. I called one because he wasn't feeling well. I called another one because his wife is sick and I wanted to know how she was doing. That's what you do. And I'm not doing it to make money. I'm doing it because I care.
100%. I believe that. Brian, one more before I let you go. And
Sure.
you've got an annual trip that you've been taking over the last several years down to Bay Hill, and that's not too far off on the horizon.
Yeah.
Talk about who can go and what's in store for them when they sign up.
Well, anyone can go, and they can email me at brianjacobsgolf@gmail.com. It's the 1st through the 4th of February, and we play on the golf course 3 days. We stay at the lodge. I love the lodge. When I was doing TV for Golf Channel, I used to stay in Mr. Palmer's suite.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, I got a chance to meet him a couple of times actually before he passed away, and he was always got up from his chair, and I was like, you don't have to stand for me. I should stand for you. And always shook my hand, and I always thanked him, for Golf Channel. I said, you take a guy like a farm kid, with no hair, and you put him on TV and you make him look good. And I said, I'm just so appreciative, of everything that you've done in the game. But just for me personally, not growing up in the game, and, just being able to elevate to this level and being on TV like that was just a big deal, a big thrill for me. And so I honor him by taking a group every year there, and we have a ball, and we have students and spouses, and so we take 12 total, so 11, and I'll start kind of marketing it a little bit harder here in another day or two, so that we can get there in February, and everybody's responsible for their own transportation. And then the first night we meet in the members bar and have what's called the Bay Hill Hummer, and it's kind of a tribute to Mr. Palmer. He was a Kettle One guy, but this drink has Haagen-Dazs ice cream in it and cocoa and
Oh my
vodka. Yeah, it's crazy, and they're really good. So I had 24 go one year, and we had them all lined up on the bar when they got in, and everybody did the salute, and we just kind of saluted his memory and a tribute to him. And I just say, like, look, guys, have a great time. When you're here, if I can serve you in any way, please let me know. I'm in this room. We'll meet on the practice green in the morning if you want to do some putting together. I'm not allowed to teach there, but they certainly let me, talk to the students, and if they're struggling with something. And so we play the golf course, like I said, 3 times, and it's a thrill. Sometimes it's a bucket list trip for, a lot of those people, and they never knew they could play there. I go, you can come anytime. You just have to stay at the lodge, but they always appreciate when I organize it, and, and it's just a great time. We have a ball. I usually do Kohler and Pinehurst as well, every year, but this year I'm just starting on Bay Hill, and then we'll figure it out from there. But anyone can go. It doesn't matter who you are. We treat everybody awesome.
Will you be down at the PGA Merchandise Show in January?
I'm not sure. I'm flipping a coin this year.
I certainly hope it comes up heads.
Yeah, well, tails was what I was going to pick. So, see why the Steelers don't win?
Yeah, there you go. My bad.
I've kind of, I'm 50-50 on it. I presented last year at the PGA, the Teaching and Coaching Summit. So I was on a panel it was awesome. And then so I said, well, maybe I'll go every 2 years and I'll just build it in around, the summit. But I'm in this really kind of cool group of teachers. We all sit together. There's about 30 of us, and we meet and we just talk business, right? And what we're doing. And some people are indoors and some people are outdoors and some people are both. And we just kind of talk about our ideas and how we can help each other. And it's really a cool group of people. And we've been doing it now for about, I think maybe 5 years. And so there's some really, I always feel like I'm the dumbest guy in the room when I'm in there. They're looking at me like, you got any ideas? And I'm like, I got a lot of them, but I'm not going to say them in this room. I go, I'll get lit up, So it's just a great group of people. And there's LPGA, PGA in there, and there's it's just awesome. It's just a lot of fun to hear what other people are doing. And like, I look at them and I'm going, these guys are amazing. They got, businesses and families, and like they're doing the same thing that you're doing. And a lot of us have, not to get off topic, but I probably am, but a lot of us feel very isolated because we work alone. We work as independents, at a club, or we work as an independent at a resort. And so a lot of times you don't have a team, you don't have anybody to talk to. You just come in, do your thing, and you go. And so I'm different. I always try to like meet a new person every day. I go in and I go up to the bar, I go into the kitchen, and they're like, what are you doing in here? Golf pros never come in here before. And I said, I just wanted to get to know you. And like, if you want a lesson, it's all free. I give free lessons at the facility that I'm at to the staff. And they're like, oh, it's so nice. And I go, well, it's nice, but also, who are you going to recommend for a lesson now when someone comes to you and says, I need a golf lesson, or you should go see him for a golf lesson? You're going to recommend me, and I do that because I'm nice, and also because it's good business, to get the pivot people in the company to recommend you.
Yeah, no, that makes tons of sense.
Yeah, I did it at Ballinel's too. I was giving them out to any staff, maintenance, to sport, to food and beverage, to H1Bs, everybody. I probably did 100 free lessons when I was there.
Wow.
Yeah, but I got 300 other ones.
There you go. Brian, before I let you go, remind our listeners again how they can stay up to date with the great things that you're out there doing, whether they're on your website or they're following you on social media.
Yeah, brianjacobscoaching.com if you want to look at the website. And then Instagram is at Brian Jacobs Golf. X is the same thing. And then I'm doing quite a bit on LinkedIn. And it's just at Brian Jacobs Golf again there. I do some deeper thoughts on LinkedIn about coaching and also the student and how to pick a coach and what you should be looking for and how coaching should be. And if it's not that way, then, I leave them a call to action, like they can call me. And I've had a few calls, on from people all over the country, Montana and Minnesota. And
wow.
Yeah, they're just calling because they're frustrated, they're not getting anywhere with their game. And then they're like, do you do online lessons? And I said, well, I do and I don't. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, I do, but I meet you in person first, and then we work online, and then we meet every quarter. So it's kind of yes and no at the same time, because I still think we need that human touch more than just a phone call or, a email. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. And I said, do I come to you or do you come to me? I go, both. Can do either one. You just have to pay for my travel. And again, most of the people are, well-to-do. And so we're laying some good inroads for that.
Well, Brian, it's always a privilege to get to spend some time with you and have you as part of the show. I hope, that we get to see you in January and you make that decision to go down there, because I'd love to see you again.
Yeah.
But I hope you'll come back and do this again pretty soon. Like I say, it's been 13 times, and I'm already looking forward to number 14.
Yeah, anytime, Chris. It's a privilege. And again, I'm very grateful for you and our friendship. And I just wish you the best in your healing process with your foot and also continued success with the show.
I appreciate that very much. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you and your family. We'll catch up again soon.
You too, Chris. Thank you.
See you, Brian.
See you.
That's a great Brian Jacobs. And again, brianjacobsgolf@gmail.com. Email him if you want to go down to Bay Hill, and why wouldn't you? So there's a great opportunity right there to get to spend some time with Brian and play one of the great courses in our country. You can also find him online at brianjacobscoaching.com is the website, and at Brian Jacobs Golf all over social media. And look, folks, like I said, I've had the privilege of knowing Brian for several years, and there's just not a finer human being and a guy that you want to take lessons from and just be around. Brian's positivity is like an aura that surrounds him. It comes through in his voice, it comes through in his actions. And when you marry that with being one of the best instructors in our game, it just doesn't get any better than that. So if you're up in the Rochester area, go find him, go see him. That's the best thing you can do. And then, like I say, hopefully get in touch with him and see what you can work out from our lessons, or to go down to Bay Hill. And I promise you, we'll get him back on the show again soon. And I really hope he makes the decision to go down to the PGA Merchandise Show. Really like to spend some time with him again in person. Coming up next, making his next on the tee debut with me is Connor Lewis. Connor is the CEO and founder of the Society of Golf Historians. Got a lot of exciting stuff, a lot of wonderful stories coming your way. Before Connor joins me, though, I want to remind you about our friends over at On Point Golf and their out-of-this-world On Point Golf Ball Marker. And if you don't have one, folks, you really need to go check it out at onpointgolf.us. Get the #1 ball marker in the game of golf. On Point is the only three-dimensional ball marker out there, with alignment technology and a removable coin that is approved to use according to the rules of golf. As you know, putting is all about line and pace. Mark your ball with On Point, engage with your three-dimensional ball marker, and have more confidence in your line, execute the putt, and you're going to lower your scores. Do what the likes of Jim Furyk, PGA professionals, and amateurs alike are doing now. They use the #1 ball marker in golf and they lower their scores. You know Ken Duke and Thongchai JD. They won for the first time on the PGA Tour in 2023, and they were using an On Point ball marker. Get yours at onpointgolf.us and make more putts. And oh, by the way, you can also customize the removable coin for any club, event, or corporate outing. They make really great tee gifts and custom products. That's also going to help lower your score. I use On Point ball markers. Mine is black and gold, 3D black golf ball with a gold line down the middle to help me line up my putts. It's like having a 15th club in my bag. It's helped my game. Why wouldn't you let it help yours? Again, onpointgolf.us. See what I'm talking about. Order yours today.
Holiday shopping for golfers can be rough, but even if you know exactly what they need,
a shot, honey,
or you're just treating yourself, the pros at PGA Tour Superstore can brighten everyone's game. With the widest selection of package sets, pre-owned and custom-fit clubs, a golf simulator showroom to demo and compare the latest tech, gift cards, lessons, and more. Plus, make shopping easy with buy now, pay later, 1-hour pickup, free returns, and our 90-day performance guarantee. So shop with the pros this holiday at the PGA Tour Superstore.
And what's the only thing brighter than your tree? A Sunday Swagger polo, of course. Sunday Swagger's holiday collection features 3 new limited editions: Cotton-headed, Santa Suit, and Buddy, available in men's, women's, and youth sizes. Plus, the return of Jungle Juice. You got festive hat designs include Naughty, Nice, and New Year's 2026. Silent Night? Not with these loud prints. This is the kind of gift that says, I actually tried. And as an added bonus, buy the New York Cat and get first dibs on the New Year's Eve polos. Shop now at SundaySwagger.com because nothing says holiday spirit like outdressing everybody else. Sunday Swagger, give yourself something worth showing off. Okay, now making his next on the tee debut with me is Connor Lewis. Connor is the CEO and founder of the Society of Golf Historians and the host of the Talking Golf History podcast. Connor is also a golf club and course historical consultant, as well as a course architectural restoration consultant as well. And I couldn't be more honored that I get to spend some time with him this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Connor, thanks for coming on the show. How are you, my friend?
It is really good. I like my goal is not to be the Grinch compared to Brian. Because he's so positive. I'm gonna be my most positive self, Chris. That's my goal.
I love that goal. So, Connor, there's so much I want to get your perspective on, but I want to start with the Society of Golf Historians, which is an amazing organization with an amazing group of people. What made you want to put that thing together?
Wow, that's a great question. I will tell you, it kind of happened by accident. I think for a decade prior to founding the Society of Golf Historians, I was kind of like, and I'm aging myself here, Cliff Clavin and Cheers. I just had this knowledge base, that you just drop, silly, what ifs and, historical tidbits. And a good friend of mine who's on Twitter, Brian Knutza, said, you really should be on Twitter. I wasn't on Twitter at all. And I got on Twitter, and Rob Morey in Australia asked me to be on a podcast. And I told him, like, listen, nobody's going to care. And I guess it did pretty well for him. And, I started the Society of Golf Historians, and he convinced me to start my podcast. And again, the joke when I started was, we're going to have 2 listeners, and I don't know how many episodes my mom and dad are going to listen to. And for whatever reason, people started listening. I don't know. Here's what it is. And Chris, by the way, I should compliment you. You are the most positive person on social media that I know. I mean, like the kindest person. And it really shows through. But what I always tell people is, and this isn't a golf history thing. I think it's anything. I think Brian is a great example of this, is whatever you do in this world, if you have a lot of passion for what you do, you're going to find success. So if I'm telling the history of lithium batteries, if I'm excited about it, and I'm passionate about it, you're going to find your audience. And I think that's kind of true in all the things that we do.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. Right. I mean, one of the things, and this, I'm just trying to draw a parallel here. I remember Jack Nicklaus talking back in the day that, he never played for the money. He played for the trophies and the titles, figuring that the money will come, as those other things come. And then, from a passion and a positivity perspective, I kind of believe that same sort of thing. Go out there with a lot of passion, go out there with a lot of positivity, and the other things will come based on that. I think that's probably where you're at as well. Am I missing that?
Yeah, I think you're dead on. I mean, I don't think Tiger played for a paycheck. I mean, I truly believe that. He played to win every tournament he was in, and, the money would follow. So, I think those people that can find that passion and channel it, ultimately are the folks that find success. And you don't, doesn't have to be doing something you love. You just have to be passionate about what you're putting your mind to. I think that's the goal to success for most people that I've met that have been successful in this life.
Makes sense. Connor, you just also launched a new company, Antiquity Golf. Talk about what you're starting there.
Well, Chris, I'm nuts. Okay, so I don't allow myself, and this is really what it comes down. Other than sleep, I do not allow myself any spare time. That's what I've come to realize, whether it's the podcast or the newsletter or Society of Golf Historians or my regular job as a real estate developer, and now Antiquity Golf. I don't find it to be hard work doing something that I'm passionate about. I've always had a passion for designing things and thinking of new things and trying to make things better. And Antiquity it's kind of a weird animal. It launched, on Black Friday, so it's pretty new, but we've been successful in the early running of whatever we are, 4 or 5 days in. And it was basically like, how could I combine all the things I love, right, into this mismatched company? And so the website, antiquitygolfco.com, you can check it out. It's basically 3 sections. And these are basically 3 sections of my brain if I were looking at the game of golf. One is, antiquities, hence the name. So, there's a place where you can buy things that, are currently in my Golfist Museum, which is what I call my little museum. For instance, there's a Wanamaker trophy currently for sale on the website, a couple of rare clubs. And I hope to work with some of my friends to bring their collections into the website, whether they can sign them or not, to really, I think it's 2 parts. Some of those things aren't affordable to the everyday golfer, and I completely get that. But I'd like to think there's a history lesson in each one of the descriptions that tells a bigger story of the game of golf. The other part that I love about golf, and this is really true in my Golfist, is I love golf art. So there are original works of golf art. We're going to be expanding it soon. Some are relatively straightforward, like an oil painting by Josh Bills of Sleepy Hollow, 16th hole, the short hole, one of the most photographed holes in the United States. And I have another pair. I have a pair of Jordan 1 size 11.5 golf shoes, and an artist hand painted Alistair McKenzie's 1932 design of Augusta National on them.
Oh my!
And I'm telling you, it's worth going to the website just to see the photo of what that artist was able to do on those golf shoes.
Wow!
And then the third thing is apparel, and it's kind of like twisting all of those things into, wearable kind of golf history, wearable golf art. I find things that I find beautiful in the game of golf. A great example is Pebble Beach's 7th hole, circa 1929, when the 1929 U.S. Amateur was played there. The 7th hole used to be an island. And I had an artist paint a painting of this island hole. The 7th hole used to be surrounded by sand. And we converted it into an old school patch that is sewn onto the hats that we've designed. And we call the design Sand and Sea. And it's unlike anything you can find currently. I'm sure somebody will probably copy it someday, because I think it's going to be successful. And then we do a lot of weird things. Like, I don't know that we're the first company to design custom-made Apple Watch bands. So if you have my biggest pet peeve of owning an Apple Watch is the bands are so boring, and they don't reflect who I am as a golf nut. And so I went out and I designed, 13 different bands. I can customize designs, but there are some that are not for sale that I did for members. I'm wearing one right now, which is Donald Ross's blueprint for Seminole Golf Club. I designed another one for Augusta National member, which is, again, it's Alistair McKenzie's 1932 routing, painted on an Apple Watch band. But then there are really cool ones. I think you're a Pittsburgh guy, so I'll give you that one that's been very popular is one of the artists we had painted the church pew bunkers for the U.S. Open. And we had the artist convert the church pew. I don't know how to put this. If you were to say top to bottom, right? If you were to, take the same image and flip it each time, and it creates what looks like a serpent that runs down the watch band. So we call it the church pew serpent watch.
Huh.
So, and like I said, I like the creativity. I've always liked custom things. I've liked designing my own golf bags. And who knows if the venture will be, a super success, but it's been a pleasurable ride thus far.
All right, so I got to go back to something you mentioned early on in that story. You have a Wanamaker trophy?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Well, to be fair, the Golfers collections, it's kind of on another level. I have a U.S. Open trophy. I have a Wanamaker trophy. If you walked into the Golfers and looked on the far wall, I have the 1931 routing of Augusta National signed by Alistair McKenzie.
Oh my
and
goodness!
It's the routing that doesn't exist today.
Yeah, well, they flipped the knives, right?
I got it from the grandson of Wendell Miller, who is the chief engineer on construction of Augusta National. So, yeah, I've got some. I own one of Bobby Jones's personal clubs, and so there were some things I thought would be. I think what I find in my collection is once something becomes, and this is a terrible way to put it, but once something becomes a piece of furniture, like you kind of see through it rather than appreciate it, then it's kind of time to move on to someone who is going to enjoy it for a long, term basis. That might be a museum, that might be a private collector, it might be a club. So, I've had some crazy things, Chris, in the past, and these are a couple things that I'm, looking to part with or at least share on the website.
You mentioned also making things better. You're also trying to buy and restore a long lost Seth Rayner course. Talk about which one and how it got lost.
I don't have any spare time. I don't have any spare time, as I mentioned. I've taken on a lot of things. Yeah, I'm talking with an investor group this week that has talked about backing me in the endeavor. I will, the course is Lake Wales Country Club in Lake Wales, Florida, for I don't know how many decades, but the assumption has been for years that it's a Donald Ross, which is not Seth Rayner. Its logo, as a matter of fact, for the country club is Donald Ross's face, which I've always found amusing. And, we know this is Seth Rayner. Seth Rayner Society knows it's Seth Rayner. And the current owner of the property was attempting to redevelop the property and at least lose half the holes and create multifamily on the course. And I would say the better minds of Lake Wales stood up for what they have, knowing that, there needs to be work put into this golf course, and rejected those plans from the developer. So we'll see, Chris, if the owner has a LOI, which is a letter of intent, which precedes what would be a purchase sale agreement to purchase the property. They have an LOI from myself. I've contacted their lawyer, let him know of my continued interest and my willingness to come to the bargaining table to figure out a way to reacquire or acquire the property for restoration.
So do you have a plan for, hey, everything works out, you end up with the property, who's going to go in there and redesign or bring it back to what it was? How's that work going to get done? Do you have a plan for that?
Yeah, I have a pro forma, I have a plan. I've got a short list. Some of the architects I've spoken with, I've consulted with, some good friends of mine in the industry for irrigation, and one of the top superintendents in the state of Florida, specifically on what it's going to take to restore the course budget-wise, what's it going to take to maintain the golf course, infrastructure. The clubhouse, for instance, is basically rotting. So I envision something a little bit more smaller, more geared toward golf. This is a golf club, not a country club. No tennis, no swimming, just pure golf is how I see it. With a private-public option. So I think in many ways, I think we'd echo what I see, at least on social media, people looking for, which is, you can have a private golf course, but still have options for the general public to come see and play a place that is typically hidden behind guard gates. So, that's exciting as well, right? Is creating something that's not very popular in the United States, but done quite well over in Scotland.
I'm switching gears a little bit. Like I say, I want to get your perspective on a few things.
You bet, yeah.
And speaking of Twitter, I tend to every once in a while get into a Twitter battle, Connor, with people. There's a grenade that some folks in the golf Twitter world like to throw out there and then watch the carnage. And one of those things is, who's the greatest of all time? Was it Jack? Was it Tiger?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Every once in a while, I kind of get sucked into that, and invariably, someone will respond not only that with that Tiger was better, but because Jack played against electricians and plumbers, which drives me insane. Now I get look, the funnel of golf talent nowadays is way wider than it was back in Jack's day, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we have more people coming into our game. But once that funnel narrows, in my opinion, once we get down to like the top 50 or top 100 players, I don't think that this generation of players or the generation of players from Tiger's era is any better than what they were in the 70s or 80s. And I would argue that when you look at the equipment that those guys played with back then, the condition of the courses back in the 60s and 70s, the condition of the greens, and obviously, like I say, the irons and the golf balls and all that stuff is so far superior nowadays than when it was back in the day. Those guys had to be artists with how they hit shots, and just the size of the heads of the clubs. The head of a driver or a 3-wood was the size of a business card. The sweet spot on the blade irons was about the size of a dime. I give those guys credit. And to me, if you took the top 50 players from the 60s or 70s or 80s and you put them against the top 50 players now in a Ryder Cup match, my money's on the old guys.
Yeah, my answer to that debate, there's no true answer to the GOAT. I use greatest of all time as a plural rather than a singular. So I believe that there are maybe 6 greatest of all time, right? So young Tom Morris, right, was the greatest of his generation, greatest of all time, better than his father, greater than Allen Robertson, greater than many that followed. The next to pick up that moniker was Harry Vardon, right? 6-time Open champion, won the U.S. Open, played in other U.S. Opens, past his prime here in the United States, but just won everything that he touched. And then I think there's probably some debate on the next one. I mean, I think Bobby Jones is a lock, Grand Slam winner, 11 majors, retires before he turns the age of 30. And I put a caveat there or an asterisk next to Walter Hagen, who I have like the greatest respect for. 11-time major winner. If you count Western Opens, you're looking at 16 majors, I think 16. And then you're going to get into Ben Hogan, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods. Those are the GOATs. There's no way around it. And how I would answer, usually it's Lou when I'm arguing with somebody. Lou Stagner likes to have this argument with me because I think he knows it does get my GOAT. But I will tell people when they have this argument, and I think I'm uniquely qualified to answer some of these questions because for 7 years, I only played hickory shafted clubs. And for 2 of those 7 years, I only played gutty era clubs.
Wow.
So gutta percha golf balls, which Harry Vardon played, which young Tom Morris played, with long nose wood, smooth face irons. I mean, the swing weights on those clubs are like in the E's, right? And I don't mean low, like E9. I mean, one of them, I have a rut iron down in the golfist that the head is so heavy that the shaft is almost as wide as a broom handle.
Oh my!
It is handmade, hand hammered, and so they're using these instruments. And like you said, putting on greens, geez, in young Tom's day might have been a 4 on the stem, probably slower than your average fairway. All the way up into Hagen and Jones's era. I mean, I just posted a video on Twitter or X, however you want to call that, a couple of days ago of Walter Hagen making a 12-footer, and you see the ball literally hop off the ground 10 times as that ball falls in that risky stroke. And I agree with you. I'm like, there is an artistry to golf that doesn't exist. We used to say that golf was as much art as it is science. And today we live in the world of science. Right? I mean,
yep.
Maybe not Tiger, but all these guys are hooked up to instruments, right? They're bringing TrackMan. They use radar, Doppler radar. We're bringing out to the range to optimize every single tidbit of their swing. And yet, some of those guys shape the ball. I mean, I'll put Lee Trevino up against anybody. Like, I'll put Ben Hogan up against anybody. Like, I'll put Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen with hickory shafted clubs. You give them modern equipment and ask them to do miraculous things, they're going to do miraculous things. So I firmly believe, and that's why I say there's 6 GOATs. I think it's impossible to compare those eras. But I also believe this. I think if you take any one of those 6 and you put them in any era, they will be the dominant player in that era. I firmly believe that. I don't care if it's young Tom Morris. I think winners know how to win, and it's a mindset as much as it is a technique.
Let me ask you about another guy who really didn't get a chance, but might have been up in that kind of era, and that's Bobby Locke. If we didn't run him out of the country and run him off the PGA Tour because he was winning so much, I wonder how great he might have been.
I mean, you gotta love Bobby Locke. I did a little story. Like, one of the things that people hated about Bobby Locke is he'd get 60 yards from the green and he'd walk it off. We didn't have rangefinders. In his time, not many people had yardage books, right? So he'd walk off shot. He was also known to hook putts. I don't even know if that's possible. That's what he said he did. But people would rag on him for how slow he played. So, I mean, this is 3 or 4 years ago. I'd have to go back into Twitter to dig it up. But I was like, everyone's complaining about how slow Bobby Locke plays. So I was like, I need to find out how slow he played. So I found some of his rounds in the Open Championship with people complaining about how long his round was, and it was about 3 hours long, Chris. He's one of the fastest players on the tour. Like, that's how fast they used to play, and they're complaining about a 3-hour round from Bobby Locke. Isn't that? I mean, that's hilarious.
Indeed,
right?
Yes.
But Bobby could play. He was beating everybody. I mean,
yeah.
He is definitely one of the. I really want to do a podcast on Bobby Locke. It's funny you mentioned that, because I just think he's one of those characters that just stands out in golf history that probably doesn't get the appreciation that he deserves.
Yeah, he not even close to the appreciation he deserves. I've been fortunate to talk to Gary Player many times on this show, and we frequently end up back at Bobby Locke for how great that guy could have been. You talk about the hook putts, and he likes to talk about it, but there's even some videos. There was one not that long ago where he's out on the green showing people how Bobby Locke used to hook his putt, and where he would aim and hit it off the toe of the putter, and by God, it was going in the bottom of the hole.
Again, they were artisans, right?
Yes.
I mean, they were just like, they were so creative in finding a way to get the ball in the cup in the fewest amount of strokes. And that's what, you have to admire that. I think that's why I love golf history. That's why, if you want to boil it down to why I do any of these things, I think the stories are just so fantastic, and I gravitate towards great stories.
So you mentioned you'd put Lee Trevino up against anybody, and you marry that with great stories. I mean, I don't know that enough people have an appreciation for what a great ball striker Lee Trevino was. I mean, he was a great character of the game, and goodness knows Nicklaus brought the best out of him. He beat him head to head several times. Yeah. But as a guy that you would want to go out there, if you're going to put one guy from one era against another guy from this era that you might want to send off first in a Ryder Cup kind of match sort of thing, I think Lee Trevino would be the guy.
Him.
Yeah.
No one wants to face Lee Trevino. There's not a soul alive, if they're being honest, wants to face Lee Trevino. I mean, he much like Hogan, he dug his game out of the dirt. I mean, he's making bets with money he doesn't have. I don't know how you grind a nerve of steel other than playing for money that's not in your pocket to where you have to win.
Right.
And you know what? I equate that to Walter Hagen. Like Walter Hagen, not that he didn't have money, but he won the PGA Championship at Olympia Fields and lost the Wanamaker Trophy partying in Chicago. And he shows up the next year without the trophy. And they're like, "Where's the trophy?" It's like, "Well, I didn't bring it because I just figured I'd win it again." And he did it. He comes back the next year and they're like, "Where's the trophy?" It's like, again, I don't plan on losing. And he won it again. He did that 3 times. He defended 4 times in a row without a trophy before they realized that they didn't have one. And then poor Leo Deagle wins the tournament and has to pose with the Massachusetts Amateur Trophy that's in a trophy case because there is no Wanamaker Trophy. I mean, that's what these golfers were built on, right? I mean, they found that pressure and they just ground through it. And I think, I'll take all the technology you want. You put any of the TrackMan guys against Lee Trevino, and I'm taking Lee Trevino.
Yeah, me too. You also mentioned Ben Hogan. And one of the things that I don't think people know enough about, I mean, obviously he won 9 majors, one of the greatest players of all time, there's no question. But he might have won the Grand Slam a couple of times if the PGA Championship and the Open Championship weren't played roughly at the same time. He didn't have a chance to win the modern day Grand Slam because he couldn't go play them both.
Yeah, it's a funny little time in our golf history. It's the gap really from Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen to I guess Sam Snead won the Open at St. Andrews, was one of the first pros to really go back there. Other than Frank Stranahan, by the way, who is an amazing American amateur golfer who always seemed to go to the Open and play well. But we didn't take the Open that seriously here in the United States. Nobody was traveling. And if you won it, I mean, hell, when Hagan won it, he won 100 pounds and he gave the check to his caddy. Like 100 pounds didn't even cover, the steamer that would take him over there. So it was always a losing battle. And so I think the PGA and most pros, to be quite frank, really didn't take it seriously. And we really probably have to thank, really there's three people. You could thank Frank Stranahan, who probably was in Snead and Hogan's ear, but, he didn't have the gravitas to get, the more Americans going over there. And I think Hogan, I think Snead, and then of course, the obvious one is Arnold Palmer, really
Right.
making it popular and a must for American golfers to go over there. So the PGA they just didn't care. If you think about it, if you're losing one or two Americans, maybe going over to play in the Open, why reschedule your major around that event? So,
Yeah.
Thank those barnstormers of Hogan, Snead, and Palmer, and really Stranahan, who was doing it before them, for really leading the way to, creating an international major. And that's not saying it wasn't an international major before, but for the Americans, there's a reason why, I hate to say this, but there's a reason why for years and even now people call it the British Open, because here in the United States for a long time, and I mean decades, we were calling the U.S. Open the Open. I have articles that say the Open Championship at Oakmont, because it is our Open. And back then, no one was traveling. So when people started traveling over to play in the Open Championship, we were already calling our U.S. Open the Open. So we just started calling it the British Open just to separate the two. So there's a little bit of history for you there too in the word.
Indeed. Let's fast forward a little bit, Connor, because this week we learned that new PGA Tour Commissioner Brian Rolapp, along with Tiger and Harris English, have floated an idea out there that perhaps the PGA Tour season is oversaturated and we need to pare it down to 20 tournaments. The season should start, they're saying, after the Super Bowl because they don't want to compete with the NFL or college football. We'll make every one of those 20 tournaments a signature event, and all the others can fall to whether it's the fall season or down to the Corn Ferry Tour, kind of get relegated, if you will. So what are your thoughts? Do we need, like Brian Rolapp is talking about, we need to have a scarcity of events. He looks at, coming from the NFL, looking at the idea that, every game, every one of the 17 games is crucial. We need to get down to a place where tournaments, each one of those is that same thing. It's crucial. How do you feel about, is it better, as they would lead you to believe, it's going to be better for the players, it's going to be better for the fans, it's going to be better for the sponsors, though I'm not sure how. What are your thoughts about all this paring down idea?
Like, do I think we have too many PGA Tour events? My answer is yes. I do feel like we get into the season where it just kind of blends in. Like the PGA Tour season really never ends right now. 20 is a really low number, isn't it, Chris?
Yes.
Like kind of a scary low number. And then when they're talking about limiting the fields of players to say 100, here's my fear, right? Unlike the NFL, you can't fire players, right? You can't say, Greg Maddox, your time's up. We're going to let you go, son. Thanks for your Hall of Fame career. And if you have 100 players that are playing in 20 events every single time, what kind of point system does that allow for them to actually get relegated? That's part one. And then part two is, how do you look at it from, does this discourage people from trying to become professional golfers? If you only have 100 players on the PGA Tour and you're relegating, who knows, Chris, is it 10? Is it 20? I don't know the number. But what does that look like when you don't have the opportunity to open the door for, some of these golfers that are late bloomers? Do they just give up and not become professional golfers? Do we essentially saturate the pool by, elimination? Like what's the value of me, working, 16 hours a day on my game to make the PGA Tour if there's only going to be 5 to 10 spots a year? And once you're on it, are you just golden? Right?
Yes.
There's probably, 50 golfers that that are, pretty much always right around the top 50. What about Tiger? Forget Tiger. He's kind of like on the tail end, but Tiger gets injured, right? Do we want to have a tour where we can't put Tiger in a tournament because there's only 100 players? And then if you let Tiger play, let's say he gets, I don't see this happening, but let's say he got 100% healthy and he is back, right? And how can you let Tiger play in this tour that only has 100 players? Is that fair to player 101 because of the name recognition? I just think there's a lot of like micro issues that I might see in that scenario. You know what I mean? And that's what I worry about. I worry about the health of the game. Like, and listen, I'm a terrible professional golf, viewer. I'm all in on the majors, and I am 10% in on the tournaments. And this is awful to say as a golf historian, but as I always say that unless it is a streak or something of significance, nobody remembers who wins the Memorial Tournament. I'm just throwing the Memorial Tournament out there. It could be any tournament. But nobody remembers that. No. You remember how many, Walter Hagen won 4 Open Championships, right? That Harry Vardon won 6, that Bob Jones won 3. You know what I mean? Like, that is how we test the eons of time in golf, is by major championships. So, my bigger fear, I think, is toward the majors. Do we dilute the field so much in a weird kind of dilution? It's kind of the opposite of dilution, right? Obviously, dilution is usually when you add more to something, it makes something weaker, but we're actually making it weaker by, pulling potential talent. I mean, number 1 player in the world, Scotty Scheffler. He kind of came into the game late. He didn't come out like Tiger Woods and start winning. Did we discourage a Scotty Scheffler from becoming a PGA Tour professional? His rise was not meteoric. It was late. I mean, he figured something out. He dug it out of the dirt, however you want to look at it. But does a Scotty Scheffler, become the number 1 player in the world if, his first 2 years he can't even get on the PGA Tour, and maybe he struggles like Ben Hogan had? Does that discourage, some future GOAT that was meant to take over, like a Sandy Koufax or a Ben Hogan, where they had this resurgent part of their latter career that made them, icons? Do we lose those folks? That's my fear. Well, and here's the thing, and the commissioners and Tiger, they're in a tough spot, right? They're looking at, I think viewership's up, weirdly enough, but we definitely have a lot of events, and where do you draw that line?
But let's take that a step further, Connor. I mean, the thing that is, the phrase that has, been everywhere in our game now for the last 3 or 4 years is grow the game. We're trying to grow the game. Well, are we trying to grow the game by limiting it to 100 players and 20 tournaments? Is that growing the game? I think you kind of alluded to it a moment ago. I feel like we're shutting the door on most people. We're discouraging, as you pointed out, guys from trying to get in there because the spots are few and far between. So what we're doing, I feel like, and there's been the ongoing battle between the PGA Tour and Live Golf and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like we're turning the PGA Tour into Live Golf. I mean, they've tried to copy everything Live does.
Chris, we're 100% doing that. No one's saying they're doing that, but other than turning 72-hole tournaments into 54, which has been reversed obviously on the Live part, but all these things that Live was doing, the PGA Tour has basically just incorporated.
Yes.
Right? So for all the things that they hated about it, they're taking the things that they like about it. And I thought it had some purpose to be different for Live, right or wrong. I mean, their audience never really followed it, but I guess maybe one question would be if Live didn't see success with the limited field, obviously there's a shotgun component, but with the fewer tournaments, why would it work for the PGA Tour? Right? And here's the other thing, Chris, I think this is the people making these decisions, and I might be wrong, I'm an outsider looking in, but if you're having the Tigers, the Rorys, the commissioner make this decision. These are people that have already had their career, right? I think what you need to do is find, the players that are ranked 75 to 100 and start asking them, what's your vision for the PGA Tour? Because listen, I guess history is always written by the winners. But when we start building a tour around the winners, I think in theory, you potentially limit the amount of winners that could, potentially rise up.
Yeah.
And that's the only problem I see with it.
No, I'm 100%, Connor. I mean, the kid that comes from the JJ Spawn that comes from out of nowhere, right? I mean, obviously,
JJ's not getting a spot.
Yeah, he's not getting a spot.
JJ's not on the PGA Tour. No. I mean, look at Wyndham. I mean, Wyndham made some of these comments. And I'm not trying to bag on Wyndham, even though I completely detest what he did at Oakmont, because I'm well connected there. But Wyndham was one of the cheerleaders for limited fields and limited opportunities, etc. And I'm like, Wyndham, you would be on this PGA Tour if it weren't for those same opportunities. And right. I think it's easy to say that once you make it, that and maybe it's self-preservation a little bit of these guys who have made it. Like, if we limit the field, we can do this until we're 52 or whatever, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know the answer. I think we have too many events. I think 20 seems like a very scary low number. I think limiting it to 100 players, I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know if anybody really understands the relegation process. You know what? If you want to make it interesting, relegate like 60 of them and see how many people sign up for that, right? Like, we're going to bring in 60 new guys. Like, I guarantee they have a coup overnight if someone brought that up. So,
yes.
But you got to think about it. Like, the great thing about the tour now is there are opportunities to join, and there's an opportunity to work your way up. How many opportunities are there if there's only 100 players on the tour?
Right. Yeah.
That's the issue.
Let me ask you one more, and with the Live Golf kind of spin, because they've been in the news recently as well. Their players are out there winning on the other tours, on the Asian Tour and the DP World Tour. David Puig won the Australian PGA Championship. Tom McKibben won the Hong Kong Open. Peter Uihlein finished second in the Singapore Open, and Scott Vincent won on the Asian Tour and their international series. So as much as we here in the States want to discount the Live Tour and we hate, all the stuff behind it and pretend that it's going to fold any minute now. I can't tell you, a couple of guys always in my ear, for the last few years. This is it. It's over. They're not going to get a season 2. They're not going to get a season 3. No one's watching. No sponsors are going to get involved. And everything that they've told me has been 100% wrong. And now they're entering another season. And they're starting to get the younger guys. Remember when they started out, right? It was, well, that's all the old guys that can't hang around anymore. That's all they got. Well, now they're getting the young guys. I feel like what their strategy is kind of morphed into is, hey, let's go out and get these young guys that are winning in college and winning on, the Korn Ferry Tour and some of these international tours. Let's bring these young kids in. Let's pay them the money to come over here. Now they're starting to win on these other tours outside of the PGA Tour. I kind of feel like we're warming up to a DP World Tour. Live Golf might kind of be strange bedfellows and get together. I'm shocked. I think if I'm the DP World Tour, I would have taken that deal in a heartbeat rather than be second fiddle to the PGA Tour. I think, the partnership that the DP has with the PGA Tour is great for the PGA Tour. I think it's a huge mistake for the DP. Because whether they want to admit it or not, they're now a feeder tour for the PGA Tour. And I think had they partnered with Live in some shape, form, or manner, had boosted the championship money in those tournaments, had they really centered on some of the great golf courses throughout the United States play their golf on, I think they really had an opportunity to create something that the European Tour had back in the 1980s, which was real international talent playing on their tournament schedule versus, Rory winning the Order of Merit playing in
I don't know, 3 or 4 events. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, and it's not knocking Rory. I have a lot of respect for Rory, but winning the DP World Tour is not really being a DP Tour member. I know he is, right? He's a PGA Tour member, right? I feel like had those two come together, I think both would be stronger entities. And I think you'd have a stronger world golf community that's not so U.S. centric. And I think that would be a good thing for golf.
Yeah.
I
think that's where they're headed.
I don't think Liv's going anywhere. I don't think Liv's going anywhere, but I don't know. I also don't know how, what they're going to do to change things, at least in the United States. And from my understanding, their world market's pretty good, but they, like it or not, the market in golf is very U.S. centric. There's just more money in our game in the United States. And I know Liv wants to be successful here. And, I don't know. We'll see. I think, is it going to be the PGA Tour and Liv come together? Obviously, I think there is an opportunity for that in the future. We'll see if the commissioner feels the same way. But I think even more so, if they could somehow figure out a partnership with the DP World Tour, I think you could turn around both organizations and recreate potentially something that was, like I said, extremely strong 40 years ago on the European Tour.
Yeah, and I think that's where they're headed.
As I see it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that's where they're headed. I think those two entities will eventually come together. I think they'll create an actual world golf tour where they'll have 3-4 events here in the States, and then they'll continue to play in Adelaide and Hong Kong and all the different places that they play now.
And I think that would be great. And I think maybe that expands the world beyond 100 players on the PGA Tour. Maybe if somehow DP, Liv, PGA could somehow combine, right, and have events all over the world at a very high level, I think that's a win for the sport. That's growing the game if you can make it happen.
Yeah, it would, and I'd be all for that. Unfortunately, with the way I'm envisioning things, is I think they got their feelings hurt, Liv, and the PIF got their feelings hurt because they tried to come together and do this thing, and I think the PGA Tour kind of patted them on their heads and say, well, we're going to drive this ship. You can come in and give us your money if you want, but you're not going to get this, you're not going to get that, you're not going to get the other thing. And I think Yasser kind of looked at that and said, oh, really? Okay. I'll make more money, this afternoon than you'll make in your lifetime as a PGA Tour member or as a PGA Tour in general. We'll make more money on the interest of our $1 trillion than you'll have, and it doesn't make any difference to me. And I'm going to choke you out. I'm going to take all your young players, and as you age out, you'll be gone.
I've always said this. I know there's been a lot of consternation towards Liv, and there's a lot of people that have been very upset about the splintering of professional golf. And I always try to take a historian's view. And I was talking to a couple different people, and I've said this in the past, but I said we live. It's the Chinese curse, right? I hope you live in interesting times. Right? Because interesting times are like war, famine, things like that. But we live in very interesting times in professional golf, like where, these things, these radical ideas of 20 tournaments and 100-man fields and, Liv and DP, and are they going to partner, or, all of them, all these things are a historian's dream, right? They will be studying this for the next 200 years, the things that are happening today. And that's what I find fascinating, right? Is that we live in interesting times. This is more interesting, quite frankly, than, Dean Beeman, Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer severing from the PGA of America.
Right. Back in 68.
It's very similar, by the way, very similar, but it is on a global scale. And I think all these things, reaction, it's been fascinating, right? It's, DP does something or Liv does something and the PGA Tour copies it. And, we're looking at Liv, and now they're going to 72 because they want ranking points. There's no way around that. or they haven't found a way around that. So they're changing the way they play the game. And I think this will be studied for as long as humans are alive and playing golf. I think this era will be studied, which, again, we have the blessing or the curse of living through this. So it depends on how you look at it. From a historian's view, it's a blessing, right? Because we get to live through the victories and the mistakes.
Right.
And, we'll let future historians figure out, who came out on top.
Yeah, well, if Liv gets those world golf ranking points, I think that changes absolutely everything because, to your point, nobody cares who won the John Deere. I couldn't remember who won the John Deere last year.
Yeah.
And, so they get to go in there and play in the majors and then go play, their other 14 events. Life is good. Doesn't matter. Because, right, that was the big knock, right? They're not playing for history.
How can they not have ranking points? How do you not give Bryson DeChambeau ranking points? You know what I mean? I'm just using him because right now you could probably argue he's the biggest name in live golf. And I think the PGA Tour has to be trying to figure out, how do we get Bryson? I mean, he is one of the biggest cogs in that wheel of live golf. He is by far their champion. He is their Scotty Scheffler, but he gets more views on YouTube.
Yep. Right. Connor, before I let you go, remind our listeners, let them know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you're out there doing and the many different adventures that you're a part of? How can they follow you online and on social media?
Yeah, you can just find me, probably the Society of Golf Historians, find most of the things I'm doing. So on Twitter, it's like @SHistorians. I have a newsletter, the Society, you can kind of find it. It's just a weekly newsletter that I find unique stories to tell about the history of the game and try to find ways to tie it into the modern golfer. And Antiquity Golf Co. Go check it out. You don't have to buy anything. Go check it out, see what you think, and let me know. I'd love to know if you think something's cool or something stupid. I'm all ears for criticism.
Connor, this has been a lot of fun, man. You're fantastic. I hope I get this privilege of having you back on the show again sometime soon.
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds fun.
Yeah, indeed. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to you and yours, my friend. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
I hope to see you at the PGA show. I'll be there as a vendor this time.
Is that right?
Well, no, I don't have a booth. I'm just walking around like a lost fool in that huge convention hall.
Well, I hope I get to bump into you as a lost soul because I'll be doing the same thing.
Love it. Let's do that.
Absolutely. Take care, Connor. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
Merry Christmas, Chris.
Same to you. That is the great Connor Lewis, folks. Again, Society of Golf Historians, antiquitygolfco.com is a website. You got to go out there. I know I'm going out there to check out all the great things he's got out on there. For crying out loud, you got a Wanamaker trophy out on that place? I got to see that. So check that site out. Again, let him know. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions about what's out there. I'd love to relay those on to Connor. And you can copy both of us. Again, you can find out on Twitter X at @SHistorians. And as you know, you can find me at CT Mascaro. But give us your thoughts. Let me know what you think about antiquitygolfco.com. Let me know what you think about. Sign up for that newsletter. Get out there and learn about a lot of the things that I think we take for granted in our game, or we don't spend the time to educate ourselves about. Learn about great players like Bobby Locke and Ben Hogan's 1953 year when he won the Triple Crown and really didn't get an opportunity, if you will, to make it the modern day Grand Slam. And a lot of the other guys that we talked about on the show tonight. Look, Connors knows more about all this stuff than all of us put together. Go learn a little something. Go do a little research. Go interact with him and learn about some of those things as well. You're going to do yourself a favor. You're going to do your golf knowledge a favor. Raise your golf IQ, if you will. I know it's helping me, so I follow my lead, if you will. Go out there and get that newsletter and read it through and read the stories and that sort of thing. You're going to have fun doing it. You're going to learn a little something along the way and then continue to follow what's going on there. Lake Wales Country Club. Can't wait. I mean, Lake Wales is where I went to college at Warner University. So I'm very excited to see that course come back to life. I'll be talking to Tom Patry about it. He goes up there periodically into that area and plays. So I would certainly be talking to TP about that. Maybe that's something we can talk about next week when he comes back on the show. But give Connor a follow, give them all a follow, and let me know what you think. All right, my friends, it is time for me to put a bow on this episode of Next on the Tee. My sincere thanks again go out to Brian Jacobs, Connor Lewis, and Dr. Bob Winters for joining me this week. Scheduled to join me next week are, like I mentioned a minute ago, TP will be right back with us. Putting guru Stan Moore will make his next On the Tee debut. And our good friend and two-time winner out on the PGA Tour, John Inman, will be back. So, folks, it's going to be a really fun episode, folks. I hope you'll come back and press play on it. I want to thank our friends again over at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review for hosting this show on their site. For coverage of everything going on in Western Pennsylvania, including your favorite sports, go to triblive.com. You can find the show by then clicking on the Sports Section tab, and you're going to find the most recent episode on the homepage of the Sports Section. Or you can click on Sports and then Podcast Network. Then you'll see the Next on the Tee logo. If you click on that, many of the most recent episodes from this season are right there for you as well. But as you guys know, you can find the show pretty much anywhere you get your podcast content. We're out there on Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, golfnewsnet.com. Pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts, we're probably on that site too. Just type Next on the Tee into the search bar. You'll probably find us there as well. But as always, my biggest thanks go out to each and every one of you for being the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Until next time, hit 'em straight, my friends.
Thanks for joining Chris again this week on Next on the Tee. We hope you enjoyed the conversations as much as we did. Please share the show with your golf buddies and be sure to follow it on TribLive or your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Thanks for pressing play and being part of the journey. We'll see you next week, right here, where the best minds in golf share their stories.